वहाँ से log off करके.
On that, I have come. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Mr. Taneja joined. Sir, welcome.
Thank you.
Sir, we'll just start playing the ACMA Center of Excellence movie for 3.5 minutes, and then we'll begin. So meantime,
But you have to
will
tell me whether I'm centered correctly or not. I cannot see.
You can just move to the little left. That is fine. Now it is fine, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. So Sapna, can you just start playing the ACMA Center of Excellence movie?
The camera a little closer to you, Mr. Taneja. Is it possible? I mean, a little bit more focused towards you. There's more of a headroom. So if you could reduce the headroom.
Sapna, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Is this better?
Yes. Yeah, this is fine. Much better. Yes.
Good afternoon, boss.
Yeah. Good afternoon, all participants.
Sapna, please start the ACMA Center of Excellence movie.
Yes.
Excellence is a learned behavior. It's an art and a science that can be taught.
And the ACMA Center for Excellence, Saksham, imparts world-class technical and behavioral skills,
enabling auto component manufacturers to provide best-in-class quality to our customers,
along with creating a safe and productive work environment.
Saksham is all about building capabilities for the future.
To augment the capabilities of the Indian auto component sector in line with the changing customer needs and global technological developments, the ACMA Center of Excellence, Saksham, has been conceived to upscale and create talent for the industry. The Center of Excellence focuses on four-pronged vision, providing a conducive learning environment for enriched experiential learning, supporting the auto component industry for quality first and safety must, facilitating an organizational culture that places organizational goals above individual ones, enabling design in India for new product design and development.
In order to provide a soft skill and a technical skill to the industry, we have created the Center for Excellence along with the partnership of our industry academia such as IIT, AOTS and Maruti Center for Excellence.
Setting up of a Center of Excellence has been on ACMA's agenda for last several years, and I'm glad that this year's our dream took a concrete shape. We have now an ACMA Center of Excellence, Saksham, set up in Sonipat. Saksham, as you all know, means empower, enabled.
The Center for Excellence will lean on subject matter experts, industry experts, and look at bridging the gap that exists between existing capabilities in our industry and what the automotive industry will require as we make leaps in terms of technology.
Implementing new technologies, new processes, aiming for zero defect quality, and digitizing the entire supply chain. All these changes require highly skilled manpower, having the right aptitude and the right attitude. The Center of Excellence is established precisely to be able to impart these skills.
The Center of Excellence would help the members in augmenting the skill in the areas of automation, smart manufacturing, lean manufacturing, and bring in manufacturing excellence.
It's also very important that we have a campus. The campus creates an academic environment which is more conducive to learning.
The automotive industry in India and globally are undergoing rapid technological changes, on the front of emissions, safety, and environment. It is imperative for the Indian auto component industry to ensure that our shop floors, as well as our products, are world-class, as also on the cutting edge of technology. Our long-term vision is to offer use of the shared resources at the center by the industry for co-development of products and creating intellectual property.
We request the ACMA membership to encourage their associates, to encourage their management to come forward and train at the ACMA Center of Excellence and be future ready.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, good afternoon, participants. I think we are starting the program now. And my name is Dinesh Vedpathak. And as you have seen the movie of the Center of Excellence, I just want to take 1 or 2 minutes to brief on ACMA's activities. So, Center of Excellence got two major labs. One is called Advanced Mechatronics Lab with 7 stations. And we do conduct practical hands-on experience training. We do have 16 workstations for the design competency development. We do have a 3D scanner also, and we conduct a lot of webinars and programs under cluster programs, and we support on cost reduction, break-even point reduction, inventory management, quality management. And I think you can connect us and we will be connecting back to you. So today's topic is very well chosen, that competing with the dragon. And we want to improve our manufacturing base to compete not with the China, but also to compete with the global. So global is our competition. And I think with this today's panel discussion, our knowledge gets enriched. With these few words, may I invite Director General of ACMA, Mr. Vinay Mehtaji, to give the opening remarks.
Yeah. Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you for very crispily talking to the audience about the ACMA Center of Excellence. And this webinar is brought to you under the aegis of the ACMA Center of Excellence. You know, these are very unusual and very, very challenging times. And while there are many seminars happening, many webinars happening, we thought to bring to you something really very, very different, something very, very pertinent, and something very, very special. We've curated this webinar especially for you to, in a way, understand how we could navigate these challenging times, especially in the context of the challenges being faced, not only from the disruption that the industry is facing, but also in a way with some amount of geopolitical challenges that the country is facing, and with our Honorable Prime Minister urging the entire country to become self-reliant or Atmanirbhar, as we say. So today's topic on competing with the dragon, the smart manufacturing way. You know, the ACMA, the industry, the members of ACMA live, breathe, talk manufacturing, and you know, the hum of factories is music to our ears. And when in these times the factories are not humming, I feel rather depressed. You know, we thought today we could discuss how we could actually take head-on the challenge, and can we actually be smarter than our adversaries. You know, competing with China is not like competing with a company, it's like competing with the nation. In that sense, we have, you know, put together this program. Of course, since the entire program will dwell on fact and even smarter, our moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, before I invite the moderator, let me quickly welcome all our esteemed panelists. We have Mr. Lukesh Paik, who is the General Manager and Head of Digital Enterprise at Robert Bosch Engineering. We have Mr. Anirudh Kadkol, who is the Head of Manufacturing IT at Mahindra & Mahindra. We have Mr. Nishant Jairat, we have Mr. Gaurav Swarup of Automation America. We have of Gabriel India. And our last panelist, Mr. Sri Karumbati. He is the chairperson of the ACMA Digital Committee, or the Digital CFT as we call it. He's also the CIO of the SSS Springs from Bangalore. But ladies and gentlemen, very special. He's my mentor, and I take great pride in introducing him to all of you. You all have seen him at the ACMA annual session. In fact, I always thought that the ACMA's annual session is pivoted around him. So he has moderated many panels at the ACMA annual session over the years. And in a way, somewhere he is the strategic, intent. He's actually the man who, in a way, drives ACMA. So just a very, very quick introduction, not that he needs. Mr. Ashok Taneja is the managing director and the CEO of Shriram Pistons and Rings. We all know it is one of India's largest manufacturer of pistons, rings, and engine valves. Not only a manufacturer, but also one of the largest exporter in this space. Mr. Taneja has been the past president of ACMA. That does not even mention here, but that apart, he's also been a mentor to the ACMA Young Leaders Forum, and he today is the advisor for the ACMA Center of Excellence, and under his aegis, we are doing this program. And of course, I always thought he fitted more in Bollywood. With his very handsome look. So, Mr. Taneja, over to you. And I know this session is going to be a hit. So, with that, I give the baton to you. And do conduct the session in your own unique way. Thank you.
Thank you, Winnie. And good afternoon, everybody. We are going to discuss a very interesting subject on which, if you ask 10 people, they will have 11 views on competing with the dragon. And the theme today is competing with the dragon, the smart manufacturing way. What is the first thought that comes to your mind when you think of China? For example, when you think of Germany or Japan, you think of great quality, latest technology, but also high prices. When you think of USA, you think of innovation. Google, Apple, Amazon, Tesla, and you think of user-friendly devices. When you think of China, the first thought that comes to mind is low cost, very fast development, scale of production, and a quality that is increasingly getting acceptable in various products. More recently, China has started to be known for its technology with 5G networks, smartphones, artificial intelligence, etc. But most importantly, China has become the factory of the world. Therefore, if India aspires to grow its manufacturing footprint, if India aspires to grow its GDP and provide millions of jobs, if India aspires to create a middle class, then the benchmark that we have to compete and beat is the dragon. Why more particularly the dragon? Indian auto industry, Indian auto component industry is driven by many things, good quality, technology, but most importantly, affordability. If affordability is the key to success, and somehow China has found a way to offer affordable, cost competitive products of reasonable and acceptable quality, then clearly that is the benchmark we must first beat if we aspire to become a major auto component manufacturing hub in the country, in the world. just to remind you, manufacturing is about 16% of India's GDP, and 50% of the manufacturing GDP is auto. So auto, in a sense, is 8% of India's GDP. It is significantly bigger percentage of its jobs and what it provides, all the way from raw materials to component manufacturers to the OEMs to the dealerships to the workshops, the entire cycle. It is one of the most important businesses in the country. Fareed Zakaria very recently said that the most important part of a global power is economic power. So you must build your muscles before you can flex your muscles. Therefore, if India aspires to play a role on the global stage, then we have to grow our economy faster. We have to, therefore, grow our manufacturing faster. And within manufacturing, we have to grow our auto and auto component industry faster. And the cultural nationalism has to give way to productive nationalism, where the theme is productivity and cost competitiveness. Because no country in the world has been able to create a middle class without becoming a big manufacturing base, whether it's Korea, Japan, and before that, United States, Europe, or China. I have a team of 6 eminent panelists who were just introduced to you by Vinny Mehta. And we are going to make certain observations to them to obtain their views and insights on what India must do to be able to compete with the dragon and win. I emphasize the word compete with the dragon and win, because we have to ensure that we are de-risked from imports. We have seen what the changing political landscape can mean in terms of risk if we are not Atmanirbhar. We have to create jobs. We have to grow our exports. And we have to make sure that we are able to provide inclusive growth to our large number of people. So what is the best way to win vis-a-vis the dragon? Let me open this discussion by asking our panelists to share their observations on what do we need to do to compete with the dragon, more specifically in the area of auto components. They have scale, they have better infrastructure, they have many other advantages, including a more disciplined labor. So, can we compete and win? I request Anirudh, who heads digital at Mahindra & Mahindra, to share his views first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Taneja, and a very good afternoon to everybody who has joined in on this webinar. Very interesting topic. We have been looking at it since a few decades. And the question you're juxtaposing against China, I can very simply say, if we improve on quality primarily, followed by productivity and speed, I think these 3 things would sum up a very general approach, but would also demand very specific steps from all of us in the country to be able to, if not at least win the battle, be in the standing with a country like China at the outset.
Lokesh, do you want to make any very quick comment on what do we need to do to compete and win vis-a-vis the dragon, more specifically in the area of auto components?
Mr. Tanisha, thanks for that opportunity. Indeed, a pleasure to be part of this panel. I second Anirudh's thought there. While it looks basic, but the main important now is the intent we need to have. The first is to have an intent. The intent to adopt new technologies. I come to that as we go further. On a quick short note, I want to say that the intent to adopt new technology is what we need at the moment.
Do you think, Lokesh, intent alone will get us there? Or it is just a start?
It's a start. As I mentioned, I'm going to get into more as we go further in the panel. The first basic thing, having seen the auto component industry, having worked at Bosch, and even having offering solutions on new technology to multiple auto component suppliers in the world, I've noticed that at India, what we need to start is an intent to begin with. And then as we go further, we need to do several steps to get there.
Let me take this question forward with you, Lokesh, as I come to the other panelists later. Do you think intent has been lacking in the Indian auto component sector? It is a highly entrepreneurial set of manufacturers. So what is really missing?
Yeah, Mr. Tanisha, it's a mixed bag feeling, I would say, when I say there are few, of course, all of us are eagerly looking forward to do it. India is known for highly optimistic people with a lot of things to do. There's a willingness to do. When I say an intent, it should not be on a half-baked intent where you start doing it. The intent is to that I'm going to adopt new technologies. I'm ready to fail fast, fail cheap. I'm also ready to take those smaller bets without even waiting for a bigger outcome to come in. That's what I meant with intent. So intent can be categorized in multiple ways. I've been to conversation with multiple CEOs in India. I take a small example with India versus another country where I also cater to using my solutions, say Turkey. When I've always visited Turkey, I've noticed that while government has inbuilt a lot of positive measures to improve the manufacturing, so as India has also done it. The intent of those CEOs to take up those inputs coming from or allowances coming from government to quickly convert that into a smaller pilots to a bigger scalable projects is little higher compared to us. So I'm not telling that we are lacking that. I say that the required measures, the required intent could be even in a scale of comparison, we can do a lot better there.
Okay. So you feel the starting point is an intent, it's a desire to win. Obviously, everything begins in the mind. And that means with a deeper commitment, you feel that we will be able to compete with the dragon. Manoj, would you like to make any specific observations on what you think about competing with the dragon? No, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm audible now?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Ashok, and thank you all for joining this webinar. So yeah, some thoughts, Ashokji, like you mentioned, the word says competing with the dragon. So first and foremost, we have to be competitive. We have to be competent. Dragon comes next. We have to be competitive when we talk about the world scale. So today, let's say Indian automotive industry is rising fast and doing very well, but we form a very minuscule percentage of the global automotive trade. So the good part there is if we are able to compete on a world scale, which is quality, cost, and delivery. India has done this. I mean, Indian auto manufacturers, auto component manufacturers have done this, definitely, but in pockets. It is not as prevalent across, like say in China. So that is the scale that we have to think of and become competitive and competent on a world scale, on a global scale. But the good part, Ashokji, I mean, I'm an optimist. What I see is there is a huge upside. Wherever we are today, and we add on to the improvements which we are going to discuss going forward in this conversation, there is a huge upside which all of us can look forward to, and definitely we can win, as you said, in I would say even in the midterm basis, may not be in the short term, but midterm, yes.
So what you're saying is that notwithstanding the fact that they have a better ecosystem, better infrastructure, cost of capital, and government support, it is not just possible, but it is imperative for us to win.
Absolutely.
Let me supplement this before I come to the next question, that India imports about $17 billion worth of components, auto components, and 25% of these come from China. India exports close to $16 billion worth of components, but only 2.5% are exported to China. And I think that itself has a story to tell. So let me ask Siri to step in here and share your observations on what exactly do we need to do despite some of the areas where China leads and has a competitive edge over us. What do we need to do? What should we do to compete with the dragon?
Thank you, Mr. Taneja, and good afternoon, everyone. Before I answer that question, Mr. Taneja, I want to lay out some data points which gives us a perspective. So for example, in 1985, around that time, both India and China were around $1 trillion economy, GDP, nominal GDP wise. And today, if you look at it, so India is close to about 3 and they're at 14.5. And likewise, if you look at the per capita income, it was around $185 in the 1970s. And today, India is at around 2,000 and then China is around 10,000, about 5 times bigger. And one of the reasons, as you rightly mentioned, it's, that has significantly contributed to China's growth is their laser focus on productivity. In fact, if you look at those numbers, in 1978, India was 130% more productive as a nation when compared to China. But on the other hand, this decade, we have dropped to only 60% of China's productivity. So there has been a very significant drop. Of course, there has been capital inflows and all that has happened in China, but one of the main reasons is the productivity itself. And number 2 is their focus on innovation. Once again, a data point here. So China today files about 21% of the global patents in the world. So that's almost equivalent to what US is. US is around 22 and China is about 21. Whereas the kind of number of patents that are filed out of India is only 0.8%, not even 1%. So that shows there is a big gap, not only in productivity, but also in innovation. And if we really have to compete against China and other nations, these are the 2 areas that we really have to focus.
No, past is not necessarily a great indicator of the future. China has got ahead of us. We are aware of that fact. And that's exactly why we are saying, what do we do now onwards in order to get ahead? India has smarter people. Look at the number of CEOs India has given to the whole world. India has IT skills. We are a global leader in that area. India is known to be a very flexible nation. We're able to adapt very well to cultures, to different environments faster. And yet China seems to have taken a lead. And yet what I'm hearing from the panelists so far is that if you believe in the future, if you have the intent, and if we are able to get our ecosystem right, we will be able to move forward. So what do we need to do to make sure we become more cost competitive, more productive, and catch up with China, to get ahead of China? Nishant, at this stage, if I may invite you in to come and share your views.
So thank you.
What do we need to do?
Thank you, Mr. Taneja, and good afternoon to all the participants present on the call. I would like to pick it up from where Lukesh left. He said intent is necessary, but I would also like to add that acceptance is also necessary when it comes to beating China. Generally, there are always an apprehension that we cannot beat China. First, we need to accept that yes, it is possible. We've been doing it even with respect to 2.5% of what we are exporting to China. So yes, it is possible. And how we can do it is, first thing is to get your basics of manufacturing right, and then aiming for manufacturing excellence. And then comes the the smart way of manufacturing. So first thing I perceive is that we need to get our basics of manufacturing right. What even Mr. Anirudh touched upon, in terms of the output of PQCDSM. Once these are there, then comes the part of smart manufacturing. So, yeah.
So what you're saying, Nishant, is that we need to get the basics of manufacturing right before we are able to think of global cost competitiveness.
That's correct.
Manoj, would you like to come in? Your company has been doing a lot of work in this regard. And after that, I'd like to come to Gaurav and share, have his thoughts on the subject.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, that's a very valid point made by Nishant, that we first need to get our basics right. You need to have your manufacturing systems in place. You have to have good work ethics. Ashokji, you mentioned we have produced so many smart CEOs, we have produced so many smart people. But where I think we can improve as a country is basic discipline. Basic work discipline is what we possibly can learn from China, from the Southeast Asian countries especially. So that is where we need to improve. So I said, in terms of a good basic manufacturing discipline, in terms of fundamental skills, fundamental human skills, in terms of basic efficiency, health of machines, in terms of layouts, in terms of line balancing, these are basics.
So are you suggesting that we are not investing enough in the skilling of people, in implementing the basic manufacturing systems, in terms of discipline?
Yeah, I do think so. We are not investing very well. In fact, our curriculum, starting from where the people get educated, in fact, that needs to get modified a bit to suit the industry requirements. It starts right from there, from the generation of the skill. We need to improve on that. Plus, as an industry, we need to invest more in people, in skilling people, because finally it is a fundamental skill that is going to take you. Let's say if you talk about, a line efficiency of OE, which is, let's say, 70%, which is considered reasonably good, 70-75%. For us, if anybody is at 60% to get to 75%, it can't happen through smart manufacturing. That has to come through basic manufacturing discipline, to basic manufacturing systems, as I said. But to get the top up from 80 to 85, it's going to be difficult to get to these basic systems. There, smart manufacturing definitely will play a role in terms of the incremental value, in terms of the speed at which you achieve this. Finally, I am of the firm belief. You look at Toyota. Let's look at the classic example, Toyota. I'm sure they have invested far more, and they continue investing far more in basic fundamental human skills. For them, smart manufacturing, or the so-called Industry 4.0 or IoT, comes later. So they've built an excellent foundation, a rock-solid foundation. And on top of that, you add on this new lever that technology has provided all of us with today, and then take it higher to the next level. So that's
okay. I'll come back to that point and ask Anirudh to make a comment on that. But before that, I want to bring Gaurav into the picture. Gaurav, you have been working with companies to help them implement smart manufacturing. What we are hearing is we first need to get the basics of our manufacturing right before we can implement smart manufacturing. Would you agree with this? Because that will make the journey much longer.
Thank you, Taneja Saab, for having me on this panel, and it's indeed a pleasure and an honor. I beg to disagree with some of the things which have been said. I feel that the smart manufacturing we are talking about basically helps us leapfrog from where we are to where we want to be. We don't need to pass through the entire process, and I'll explain how. I'll just mention three areas: productivity, quality, and machine health. These smart technologies which we have available today help you to improve drastically on those areas For example, when we talk about productivity, the OEE of the machines. So as Manojji said, that if somebody is at 60%, with the basics, he can come to 70 or 75 and then use IoT or smart technologies to go to 85. My view is that if you install these smart technologies like universal machine monitoring, they help you improve your basics because they help you improve the reasons why you are having poor productivity, whether it's the discipline of the operators, whether it's wrong fixturing and too much time wastage switching from one job to another. So these things are tools which help you get your basics right and get them so right that you leapfrog to a next level. Now, if we talk about quality, just improving the skill of the operator is not going to solve your problem when you are in a situation where even 50 ppm defectives is not accepted by your customer. But if you have auto correction systems involved, which is part of smart manufacturing, it helps you to get system-based quality without depending on your operator or his skill level. So my take on this is smart technology, if used correctly in an affordable, phased manner, helps you get your basics right and more. Thank you.
Okay, I think you make a very interesting point that smart technology itself can help you to leapfrog and carry out those improvements in your manufacturing processes, which will lead to better controls and hence better productivity and better quality. Anirudh, may I ask you for your observations on getting the basics right before we implement smart, or can we use smart to take care of some deficiencies that we might have currently in our ongoing systems, legacy systems?
I think it's a very interesting set of points or counterpoints, which both the panelists before me just now mentioned. Particularly now when that I'm seeing in Mahindra, we are working with both kinds of systems. We have new systems which have come up, recent plants, new plants, which are greenfield. And we also have a lot of brownfield. If I quantify, it could be more than 50 to 60% of Mahindra would be called as a brownfield area. And this question whether technology can help or not has a very interesting bearing. One thing is for sure, if you are going for a greenfield plant where the new technologies are integrated into the design itself, it definitely gives you a very big jump in quality and productivity. And if you are looking at any skill set which is operating on the greenfield plants with the newer technology, then there is a definite advantage in quality and productivity and speed, almost irrespective of the gap in the skill sets you may have. And if you operate with the same people, with the same gap in skill sets or same average skill sets on legacy equipment or older equipment, then yes, productivity and quality are affected and they are a matter of skill. So fundamentally, I think both the panelists are probably pointing in an area which I am looking at as de-skilling. If we use technology for de-skilling in a very big way, bring in mechanization first, followed by automation, I think this will be a very good beginning to say, yes, we require smart manufacturing, but in ways which are more fundamental to improve the business basics of getting quality and productivity.
Okay, I think you make a very interesting point that smart can help you to de-skill. And whether your plant is 10 years old or 50 years old, even if you have legacy machines, what you're saying is you can use technology to make your machines and processes smart.
Yes, yes.
Lokesh, this will not be complete. This question will not be complete without coming back to you, because Bosch has been leading this effort and providing support to many companies to implement smart manufacturing. What is your view on this subject?
Interesting inputs coming in while Mr. Gaurav mentioned about his view and then Manoj brought in. I want to summarize all that together. We have started. 2012 is Industry 4.0 world was coined by an Tech University, Bosch, Siemens, Infosys, Mahindra. A lot of people, Tech Mahindra, all of people were sitting together with an intention to create the fourth industrial revolution, a name to it, and come up with a white paper. 2012, a Bible came out called Industry 4.0 White Paper. Since then, we took it very seriously and we started implementing Industry 4.0 in true sense. And we noticed that it's not as easy to write a white paper to implement on the ground, because we are at 272 plants worldwide, 132 years of legacy, a lot of old machineries, new products coming in. While the basics were right, we call Bosch production system nothing but any production good system, whether it's Toyota or it's Ford or Mahindra, all of us follow the basic of production system where we do a detailed value stream analysis, arrive at the use cases, then decide what technology to be implemented. So we went with that basics. So that basics helped us to start with small pilots in a list of use cases we want to achieve in, even to a smallest of connecting one machine, getting a data out of that machine, which are basic of OEE, maintenance possibilities, energy efficiencies, to create a momentum in an organization that Industry 4.0 is not an animal that you need to be scared of. Let's embrace that because it's a change, and not to be embarrassed, embrace it and then create those champions. Once we did, we took a serious thought of creating a value stream analysis, taking that entire value stream, digitizing that particular value stream with an ROI in mind, because that calls for an investment. That so ROI.
Lokesh, I'll come back to you on that because you are now taking up a very important second subject. But you are supporting the fact, what Manoj said, that it is good to have your basics right. It provides a great platform on which you can go smart. But even if there are some deficiencies, as Gaurav said and Anurag said, even if there are some shortcomings, smart manufacturing technology can help you to overcome these and de-skill the operations, and you can actually improve your cost and productivity. Great. So
absolutely.
Right. So in the last days, I have been speaking to a variety of industries to know what is their view on smart manufacturing.
Okay.
And not unexpectedly, I came across many people who had doubts about smart manufacturing. Example, I am a small company. Smart is not for me. This was about 150, 200 crore company, successful company. And when I said, how competitive are you with China? So they said, no, China is far more competitive. But I am too small to go smart. A second observation came. And Siri, I'll begin with you to take your observations on this. Where do I start? I have several machines, several processes in my plant. Where do I start? Do I have to do it all the way? Or can I start in a limited way with specific machines or processes? So before I come into the several other observations made by the auto component manufacturers, big and small, Sri, would you like to comment on the doubts which were expressed?
Sure, Mr. Taneja. Before I answer that question, I just want to make one point regarding the discussion we had earlier, whether automation can be a substitute for not having the basic requirements. So even though I'm a strong believer of technology, but it has to happen in a certain order. The order I see it is as first is we have to have the right people in place. What I mean by that is, skilling is very important. So just putting technology around but not having the right people is not going to solve the problem. So first comes people, which is very foundational. We have to have the right people, the right skills. And second comes the process. And then thirdly comes the technology. So unless we run a 100% lights off automated plant, where there are no people involved, it is very difficult to not have these foundational elements. Technology alone is not going to address the problem. So having said that, yes, definitely, we can start on a very small scale.
So what you're saying is people, process, and then technology.
Exactly. Exactly.
Fair enough.
Yes.
You make a point. Yes, please carry on.
So
the question of I am too small. Where do I start?
Absolutely. So let's say if you want to monitor, say the OEE of a machine, right? Right now, without having the ability to collect data, it's a very manual process. In the last several years, it used to be very expensive to fit sensors, to fit the technology in, and you also needed to have the ability to work with very large vendors. But what we have seen happen in the last, I want to say half a decade or so, is there are many, many startups who have come right here in India, who are able to provide such kind of a small scale automation or small scale data collection capabilities at a very nominal price. In fact, I know of a company which charges maybe 1,000 rupees a month per machine. It's as low as that. And they come, they provide the hardware, they maintain everything. And what that does is, and my recommendation is that this be not done on all machines. So we pick the machines where it really matters. If it's a bottleneck operation, or if it's an operation where any downtime can be very expensive, those are the machines where our companies can start. And as they get used to such technologies and ability to manage the output of these systems, then they can scale up and take it to the rest of the machines in their plant.
So you make two important points. Number one, it doesn't matter if you're a small company or a large company. And number two, you don't have to start all the way. You can start with your critical machines or bottleneck machines to go smart.
Absolutely.
I think these are two very important points you make. Manoj, would you like to make any observations on this? And after that, I'd like to come to Gaurav because he has been helping companies to implement some of this.
Yeah, Ashokji, so again, a valid point that thanks, Sri, you brought out the basics right in terms of people, skills, and technology. So Ashokji, I just want to clarify on the earlier discussion that we had. It is not skills or smart manufacturing. It is skills and smart manufacturing. It's not an or issue. It's an and issue. So we have to have both. Again, Anirudh also brought a very valid point of de-skilling. So we have to use technology to de-skill, but we still need to build on the skills part. So that's one on the previous discussion that we had. Coming to this point of that I'm small. Where do I begin? In fact, let's say if I look at even the company where I work, which is Gabriel, which I would say in Indian parlance, it's a mid-sized company. But if I break down my company into various plants, each plant is probably a small company, akin to a small company. So each of our plants address this issue exactly from that perspective that, is it too small or should I make the start? Should I invest in something which, is really going to give me some good returns? So to start with, I have to take the cautious approach of having a good, the typical quick win approach that we have. We can start small, invest small, look at a good payback, which builds a lot of confidence and attraction in the company to this new initiative, which, if we call smart manufacturing new initiative, which currently I think it's almost getting.
So you're saying start small, start pilot, create a success story. It will help you to get smart going across the company. There is a contra view, and I will just come to that, and I will ask Anirudh and Nishant to then comment on that. But before going to that, Gaurav, would you like to come in on companies? I am too small. Where do I start?
Sir, first of all, I fully agree that training is the first step. Without training, you cannot implement smart technologies. First. Secondly, nothing is too small. Even the smallest tier 3 company invests tens of lakhs in every machine it adds. So it's a question of mindset. When we are investing, say 25 lakhs on a machining center and we think it's required. Now, why can't you think of spending some money on small pilot projects, as my predecessor said, start small, identify some critical lines or cells. Within them, you can have the bottleneck machines, invest a small amount of money, and believe me, it's a very small amount of money compared to the cost of the machine. And the kind of productivity jump you get, something like 15%, 20%, the kind of quality jump you get, 5 times reduction in defectives. It's awesome. The ROI, and I'll not come to that because you have those things lined up.
Gaurav, I want to interrupt you here. This is precisely what I wanted to tell Manoj and to you. The question is, of course, addressed to Anirudh. This is the difference between India and China. We think small. They think big. They think if this technology works, let me go all the way. Why are we hesitant to adopt smart technology? And Anirudh, if you can tell us, is it better for a company to look at implementing smart technology across the supply chain, starting from raw material procurement to manufacturing to supplies to customers and all the way cash to cash cycle? Or it is still okay to do it only on the manufacturing end?
Again, interesting point to look at prioritization. The more important points we get when we talk to our suppliers also, because there is a fair bit of automation which our suppliers are also doing. One thing I would like to be very clear when we are within our working environment, when we talk to suppliers also, we hear this a lot as to where do we start. And the simpler answer would be to look at what you are doing best. Do you want to improve that? Or do you want to improve something which is required for you, but you are not so good at? So it's not necessary that every organization would want to improve manufacturing per se. Some of them would like to probably want to improve their supply chain. Some of them would probably want to improve something related to testing only, because that would be an area which would be involving a lot of value for the end product. It also depends on the complexity of the product. I would like to highlight a couple of studies which I had seen. When you see the difference between China and if you see the twin of the same company in India, the difference in quality and the difference in productivity, if you look at the bigger organizations, maybe similar to Mahindra or Bajaj or Tata, the differences are not much. But as you go to the tier 1 supplier and the tier 2 supplier, the defects and the productivity rates are quite different. So it probably tells you a story about the possibility of looking at productivity is different when you're looking at a bigger organization and when you're looking at a smaller organization. Obviously, if we are saying that let us bring in technology and let us change it everywhere, the first question is going to be how much is it going to cost? Because technology, let us not forget, is a big driver of cost. It may or may not be a driver of revenue. So the question would have to be more clearly positioned for the smaller manufacturer, let us say, as to what does the smaller manufacturer want to do in his case. Does he want to improve his revenue stream? Or does he want to focus on his costs, which is going back to manufacturing? And does he want to go back somewhere further?
It's about competing with the dragon. And when you
Yes.
compete with the dragon, you're competing on cost, you're competing on quality, and you're competing on speed of development. So on all the parameters, the Indian auto component manufacturer would have to prepare himself before they get inundated with imports or with other competitors. So the key question is, do we need to go all the way, or we can do it in parts?
We need to do it in parts, in my opinion. This is how I have been seeing it for the past couple of decades at least, because that is how it is manageable for the smaller manufacturer at least. So I think first we need to manage change, and to manage change we need to be able to measure it. So the smaller measures that we take, depending on, again, as I said, our core competence. If you are a machining manufacturer, for example, your machining components, then you need to look at what are your machines throwing out. And then would you be able to look at a basic thing like, am I being able to locate my component and clamp it properly so that my quality improves or my rejections improve? These are simpler things which we can handle at a lower cost, comparatively lower cost, And as Sri was mentioning, the interventions of technology are becoming cheaper and cheaper. Last 15 years, in my observation, the costs have gone down to almost 20-25% or 10% to what they were initially. So it's almost a 90% reduction in the digital intervention cost with a much better output. Visibility has improved drastically. So you can just use your mobile phone and you don't have to invest in an IT system, which, for example, a Mahindra or a Tata or somebody would have to invest in. So the footprint of technology is what I'm focusing on, has really gone down, enabling a lot of release of productivity, helping workers to improve their productivity, which is where we should be able to compete. Competing on improving quality by improving on your productivity, rather your yield, and therefore being able to compete even with a lower volume. If you are going with a higher volume, of course, scale would come in a very big way. But then that is what is the forte of bigger companies. Even smaller companies would be able to benefit by this approach.
I think you make a very important point. Whether you are a big company or a small company, it is good to go in steps. It's easier to manage that change. And cost of technology, smart technology, is reducing, is becoming more affordable. So therefore, it can be accelerated depending on how you progress in the company. Nishant, a very quick comment from you before I again go to Lokesh for his comment.
So, Mr. Taneja, I can share from my example of what we did as an organization. I think when you're looking at transforming yourself, and that too digitally, it has to become part of your strategy. Now the actions, like how what Mr. Anirudh said, the actions can be broken down into smaller bits. So what we did in our organization was we broke it down. We looked at the overall strategy. So we have a strategy in place for the next 5 years, that what we want to do. And we have broken it down into various steps. We took our balance sheet, we benchmarked it with our competition within India and even abroad. And then from those ends, when I looked at it and I realized that, my component, the RM cost is 70% of my finished cost. So the kind of change output of that would be much more higher than what I'm going to do by investing a little bit more money on the operational side. So I started implementing, the digital transformation from the material handling side, from the inventory carrying cost perspective, and then moved on from there to the operational side. Of course, generally people follow digitally transformation as a fad. That, okay, everybody is doing it, I think I should just pick up any machine and implement it. But they don't have an overall strategy in place. They don't plan, because today you're going to invest into one machine, but tomorrow when you're going to invest into different machines, everything has to come together to work as one ecosystem. People forget that, at a later stage, and they end up making this mistake of investing money directly into smaller systems. So that is my viewpoint on that.
So you also make a very interesting point. It's good to prioritize depending on what is your biggest cost driver. Go and apply technology in that area. It will give you the biggest impact on your bottom line. And that's what you're seeking to become more cost competitive. Okay. I mentioned that when I was talking to several companies about smart manufacturing, I sensed a lot of apprehension that this is a big boy game. It's not meant for me, etc. And yet they're all fearful about competing with China. So how expensive is it? Is it affordable? And it was mentioned by Anirudh that the cost of technology is coming down. But the apprehension with people is it is expensive. And along with that is another apprehension. I don't have IT savvy people. My workforce is not IT literate. How can I implement smart manufacturing? If smart manufacturing is the way to go to compete with China, and these are the apprehensions, what is your view? What would you suggest to our many hundreds of people who are joining this session today? This is an open question to anybody who would like to take it. Okay, Gaurav, go ahead.
Okay. Sir, first of all, the first part of your question, it was about I'm too small. Second part was I need IT people. This is a misconception. These technologies, and some of them I call the low-hanging fruits. See, Industry 4 or smart manufacturing is a very wide canvas. And there are so many things like augmented reality, artificial intelligence, so many things which are difficult to implement and can take a long period to deliver fruits. But there are some technologies available which I call the low-hanging fruits. Why I use this term is that, like a low-hanging fruit, these are easily accessible, affordable, and implementable without experts. And I use the word experts in two senses. You don't need external experts and you don't need internal experts. So saying that IT has a very, very small role to play. The major role in implementing smart technologies is of the engineers, the shop floor people, the process planners, the engineering people. And of course, they need to be supported by the top management. The top management has to have the drive and the vision. And since I have this chance to speak, let me add one small.
I think we have a connection issue with Gaurav.
Deployment is very important.
No, Gaurav, we lost you in between. Can you repeat what you said in the last?
Sir, I was saying that you should start small. You should have pilot projects.
I think we are.
Yeah, I think we have a connection.
If I may.
So can I bring the same question to Lokesh and then on to Manoj?
Sure. Mr. Taneja, very interesting conversation. I beg to differ, Gaurav, here on that IT is not that important. I think everyone plays an equal role here. I want to quote two examples. One is perhaps it's also good to look at outside industry, not just an auto component, to see and learn from them. So the example I want to quote here is Akshay Patra. Perhaps people are aware of Akshay Patra, which provides midday meal to the kids. The intent, I come back to the intent part, is the intent of that is no child in India shall be deprived of education because of hunger. That was an intent. And they started way back in 2000 with 1,500 midday meals prepared. And they envisioned that they could scale a lot. So I come to the point of, imagine India has an opportunity now, and there will be a influx of lot of manufacturing orders. We need to be ready to scale at an intent within no time. So that's what Akshay Patra did. They took AI backed with blockchain. Blockchain is nothing but a digital, decentralized public ledger, and IoT technologies. They mixed everything. They were able to forecast demand. They were able to build a good midday meal of a quality, and they gave 200 billionth midday served in 2017. So that learning, if we take it to auto component industry, imagine I'm an XYZ auto component manufacturer. I have an order of 100,000 vehicle parts to be done in six months' time. So there comes your entire of value stream analysis, source, make, deliver, prepare a detailed value stream analysis, look at the entire value stream, not just a make part, also the source part, also the deliver part. Look at the technology intervention, start implementing it. There you need functional experts, nothing but a manufacturing expert. You need IT experts, you need data scientists, you need AI engines, and you need cloud experts. All of these in a technology stack of 6 layers, you need competencies across the table. Bundled together, you have a war room setup. You need a people of warriors who are ready to take it on. And that's what you need. Intent and possibility to scale and a vision in mind and build up with all IoT technologies.
So what you're saying is create a vision of the scale. I mean, think big, implement in steps. But yeah, and you're also agreeing broadly that you don't need IT savvy people to do it. You may have to invest in
yeah, there are companies, lot of companies in India. India is known for IT who outsource it. Don't have to have every people in-houses. Start outsourcing, keep the core team with you and use the skills available in India.
Absolutely. So Manoj, would you like to please share your observations on it?
Yeah, so it depends. Again, I think it's an interesting discussion, and Ashokji, I think it's coming to the point. How do we define smart manufacturing? It depends on what lens you use. Is it, when we talk about smart manufacturing, is it only the IoT and Industry 4.0 that we are speaking of, or are we also speaking of basics of low cost or affordable automation, or even high-end automation or robotization, and then IoT and Industry 4.0. So it depends how you look at smart manufacturing. So if you term each one of these which I just mentioned as parts of smart manufacturing, then yes, suddenly the whole thing opens up wide, right? So you can have affordable automation for people who say, am I too small, or where do I make a start? Definitely there is. Even when we actually embarked on this journey of the Industry 4.0, we looked at have we exploited the automation part completely first? That's Industry 3.0 actually. So have we exploited that first? And we found, to our surprise, that there is so much more you can do in basic low cost automation. So we attacked that part while parallelly kicking off this exercise on IoT and Industry 4.0. So we did both of these parallelly. We did robotization. So we had investments which were as low as a few lakh of rupees, which gave us a payback of less than a year, where I improved quality. In fact, I made it a completely zero defect machine. I eliminated people. I mean, in terms of, it was a manless machine. Cycle time was reduced. So a whole lot of improvements with a very, very small investment. So
Manoj, you make a very interesting point. I want to just underline it, that you're saying that smart manufacturing encompasses not just ensuring that you apply technology, sensors and auto readouts and feedback loops, etc., to your machines. It is basic low cost automation too. It is next level of automation too, which makes manufacturing smarter, right, de-skilling, and also affordable, and gives you a good ROI, as you say.
Yes.
I would love to have a comment on this particular thing from Anirudh on low cost automation, and then going to smart manufacturing.
Yeah, Mr. Taneja, I have been fortunate enough to go through all these phases of technology in the last 3 decades. Starting with the low cost automation with the pneumatics when the electronics was expensive, then switching over to the electronics, and now switching over to the digital and the cloud. So having seen closely all the transformations, I think the question that we as a panel today we are discussing is because we are at a certain cusp where we are still able to differentiate all of them and see them as separate components. So you can see something as IT, we can see something as digital, and we can identify. But if we are tomorrow, it will be probably like today's smartphones, where yesterday the phone was a device on which you could not see, or so many other things which you could not do on your phone. But in today's situation, nobody bothers what is there inside, and they use it with various applications. So technology today, where I am seeing it on first hand, in Mahindra today, last 1.5 years, I can very confidently tell you that at an extremely low cost, we are implementing a synthesis of fundamental sensorics, instrumentation, digital signal processing, analytics, statistics, and machine learning at a very low cost, and with a set of people who are graduates. They are not beyond graduates. This gives me the confidence to tell you that very soon there will be a very good servitization of technology for whatever intelligence and smart part we want to bring into this. So I don't think we should be worried about where should I apply, or whether I am going to understand it or not. It is going to be easy for you to apply it. The bigger question is going to be where would you want to apply it will still remain a very big question. And some part of it, like some of the panelists were saying, I would like to juxtapose a very different perspective to everybody here on board. There is a Newton part over here, which is the older causality of technology. And there is the Einstein part of here, or the quantum part over here, which is the newer technology. I would like to normally say this within my close group of engineers who we are working on problems, that you cannot probably take the inertia and the gravity out of the system. You still have to face it. The light part of it, the interesting electricity, electronics part of it will be handled easily. That is not an issue. It can be servitized. But the deeper imagination, the core competence will always remain the fundamental laws of physics, which is gravity, whether my component is okay, it has weight, how am I going to move it, whether it has to be made less in weight, whether the dimensions have to be changed. Now, these are, I think, most of the manufacturers, we are looking at automotive small component manufacturers, they are masters in this area. They are very good in this area. The remaining part of the technology will be servitized. I am extremely confident that when we look at the future, the question, yes, today is relevant. How do you look at it, and whether you can choose? But let us give it just one more year, and I'm very sure that technology will be a very great enabler for us. This is my view from the ring side.
Right. So I think we have pretty much discussed all aspects of these doubts which exist in the minds of people. Where do I start? How expensive is it? Will it have an ROI? I don't have IT people. These are all things that we need not worry about. I remember reading somewhere that the best way to make progress is to get started. And I think that's what the panelists together are saying.
Yeah.
Get started. Yes, Sri, you wanted to come in, please.
Yes, Mr. Denja, I just want to add one point. See, I've also seen the IT evolve over the last 20 years. So there used to be a time where we had to do everything ourselves, which means I had to have the skills, necessary skills. I need to have the necessary hardware and the expertise to actually absorb the technology. That is no longer the case right now. Unless I want to intentionally go that route where I want to do everything by myself. So the technology has evolved to such a state that we can get the best of the minds in the world because, for example, take some of the tools that have been mentioned here. They're all running on, I want to call it like IT service on tap. Meaning all I need is I just need to pay a credit card, go online, and then immediately I have that service available. And the people who have built these technologies could be sitting anywhere in the world, and they are the best minds in the world, right? So it has become a completely, I want to say, democratized way where it was no longer geography limited, right? Like the way it used to be. So I want to, those who want to venture into IT, I will tell them it's actually become so easy. All you require is only a credit card to get started, right? In most cases, and an understanding of what that product is, right? It has become that simple, and we can get the best of the brains in the world through cloud.
I think this must be this must be music to the ears of many of the people who are listening in. That it's possible for every company to do it, big or small. You don't need too many resources to get it going. Software services are available on the tap through a credit card. Sri, very well put. And it's good to get your basics right before we move on. Okay, but one thing it's time to reflect on. If you notice in the last 1 hour, we have not discussed anything at all about the limitations in India. It's not about infrastructure or cost of power or cost of capital. All that we have discussed is within are things that we can do. There is a circle of concern. Our infrastructure cost, our cost of capital, logistics cost, certainly they don't leave us they are not as competitive as in China. But there is so much that we can do on our own. There is so much we can do on our own too, which is within our area of influence. And all that we have discussed so far is very comforting to know that we are focusing on our circle of influence. We can come back to this a little bit later, but let me now change track. There are areas where India has done better than China, where we have either displaced China or moved ahead of China. Take two-wheelers. The global two-wheeler market was dominated by either the Japanese or by the Chinese. The higher end of the bikes were Japanese, and the normal commuter bikes was dominated in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America by the Chinese. But in the last 10 years, companies like Bajaj Auto, companies like TVS, and now more and more a company like Hero have been able to make inroads and become the #1 brands in many countries. It is the same story with tractors. The quality, the value proposition of tractors offered by India is excellent, and we are ahead of China in this game. If you look at cars, India exports more cars to Europe than China does. What has really made this possible? So is competing with Dragon only about smart manufacturing? Or is it something more than that? Anirudh, I'll be glad to have your view. Manoj, go ahead, please.
Sure.
Yeah. So a very, very valid point, and actually it gives, while you said that, it gives me a lot of, confidence and optimism, and a feel that we can succeed, because there are examples which you tend to overlook, which have succeeded, which have actually not only competed, but won against the Dragon, like you just mentioned. So if you look at the price positioning, or if you look at the positioning of these, let's say the Bajaj or TVS or Hero for that matter, in these, African or Latin American countries where, I have been to, they offer a little bit premium over the Chinese bikes, but the quality that the customer gets, they are much more satisfied because it compares closer to Japanese quality. So we ride in between in terms of quality between the Japan and China. Even in price, we are somewhere in between. So what I'm trying to allude to is, I think quality is something that we have somehow, up the game much better than what we were earlier. So we need to leverage on this quality card, and we need to improve our quality offering. You also mentioned, most of the exports are to Europe, which is a very highly quality conscious customer. So if we improve quality.
Okay, we seem to be again having a connection problem with Manoj. We lost you in between for 10 seconds.
Okay, what I'm saying is, in fact, the smart manufacturing or usage of IoT or Industry 4.0 is most amenable to, we are able to connect these two and improve our quality offering. I think we will be definitely ahead in the race. Is absolutely the point that I'm making.
So, Manoj, what you're saying is it's about offering a superior quality at a competitive price, which has enabled these companies to find to displace the Chinese, to be able to compete and go ahead of the Chinese products. I'll be very happy to get the views of Anirudh and Lokesh and
yeah, sure. I think starting with what you mentioned earlier, is it only smart manufacturing or is it something more? I would say yes, it is definitely something more. One framework I would like to mention here is of Industry 4.0 because it explains it nicely. There are three types of integration we are looking at here, and this is a bigger social aspect of integration and computing, and not only the technical aspect of computing. And this is the ability to form bigger networks. So while we are integrating everything within the factory, it is a vertical integration and it goes deeper. But there is one more type of integration, which is a horizontal integration, and one more, which is an end-to-end integration. By this, what I mean is, from your design cycle to the service cycle, there are a lot of aspects which are peripheral to manufacturing, which are not exactly the root of manufacturing, but they are a little bit removed from there, not exactly the core. These also need to be integrated. And your value chains, your suppliers, the suppliers may be in your country, maybe outside your country as well. What is the kind of integration we are looking at over there? What is the kind of network? Because when you compete, you don't compete as one factory alone. You compete as a whole network. And the Chinese and the Koreans have been the best at this. One of the reasons that they do this so well. And therefore, they have scale, therefore, they have prices which are competitive globally. If we need to do this, we need to compete very strongly. We need to also build these chains much more smartly to be able to achieve scale, to be able to achieve much better quality together, not alone in your own compound, and also to be able to leverage this across a larger network. This is what I feel would be required beyond just smart manufacturing, but I would be asking to then see this in a bigger perspective. Manufacturing really takes on a much more bigger scale throughout the value chain, not just what you restrict within your factory.
So it's not only within the four walls of your factory that we are talking of smart manufacturing. We are carrying it across, which might require cooperation of other component suppliers and other partners to give you the real cost competitive edge. And we need to create that to really compete with the dragon.
That's the urgency. I would say that is the urgency today.
Okay. I would like Lokesh to share his views on the fact that these companies have been able to, many of these Indian companies have been able to make a mark globally, including, I should not forget, Mahindras have done well. Tatas have got their trucks all over the, in so many parts of the world, and they are treated with tremendous respect. So is it only about smart manufacturing or more?
No, it is. I second Anirudh's thought here in terms of integration. He did brought in a vertical and horizontal. I want to go a little beyond that integration. A supplier of a supplier and a customer of a customer. That's a digital value chain you need to create in India, which is a need in of hour. So let's not forget the MSMEs here, right? That's an important element of that. While we are talking about our companies, which is 100 crore, 1,000 crore, 10,000 crore, whatever, there are a lot of companies with a new definition of MSME in India. A lot of companies are going to be part of this. If you want to achieve or you want to compete with the dragon, you need to bring the MSMEs into this entire digital value chain. That's what I want to highlight about. So for that, we work very extensively with MSMEs, Mr. Taneja. We have come up with, as you rightly pointed out, the cost. Is it really expensive to go for Industry 4.0 or an IoT way? As other my panel members mentioned, the cost is coming down because these are all time built products. There are a lot of reusable components into it because software is built. What you're going to only do it is enhancement of that particular software or customization of that particular software. Hence, we came up with a product called Phantom, a very invisible Phantom, where it gets connected to the machine electric signals, which we developed in-house and was using for something else. And we figured out a eureka moment that we can get a machine, we can convert that as an intelligent machine using the electrical signal, that electrical connecting point that it connects to, and start getting all the basic information about that machine. And we are building it, what we call it as LinkedIn of machines, where you get into more insights. The whole idea of Industry 4.0, you can now sum up in one word, is insight to take decisions. Insights to take decisions to improvise, insight to take decision to scale. And that's what you need at the moment as a need as now in India.
So this, I think, naturally takes us to Gaurav about implementing smart manufacturing with Tier 2. As per Lokesh, unless we do it all the way, Tier 2 and possibly Tier 3, and then across the chain, we may not derive the full benefit. And it's very simple to do it, according to Lokesh.
Yes, sir, I fully agree. Unless the Tier 3 and Tier 2 implement these smart technologies, we will not see India competing with the dragon. because ultimately the parts, if you have a supply chain where the tier 3 is doing the turning operations and the tier 2 is then cutting the gears and making the gearbox and so on and so forth. So if the material which comes from the tier 3 to the tier 2, it's having an unacceptable ppm of defectives, so you're not going to see good things happen. And the best part is that if these small tier 3 companies, let's focus on tier 3, if these small tier 3 companies implement these technologies, they are going to save a lot of money, they are going to save a lot of stress, and they are going to grow up or scale up much faster. For example, if you have a 5 machine operation in Ambattur in Chennai, a guy, an entrepreneur having 5 machines making parts for somebody, because he does not have machine monitoring, because he does not have auto gauging, and his operators keep changing, leaving and new ones coming, he is, up to his head under, he's full of all these problems of how do I manage, how do I ensure that I get a decent OE. If he implements these small low cost technologies, he will see a huge jump, say 20% in productivity, 5 times jump in quality. So the tier 3 needs to start right now, and so do the tier 2. I visit hundreds of factories every year, and I'm appalled by the condition of the shop floor, the kind of lack of visibility, the dependence on supervisors to manually collect the data and collate it so you don't get information in real time, the way quality is handled, and the way the bad parts, which even if they're caught, the way they are quarantined, or I would say not quarantined, this whole system is a mess. And this mess can be cleaned up very easily by implementing a few smart technologies today.
Great. So if these companies have been successful, whether it is Bajaj or TVS or Mahindra or Tata or many other companies, it is not just smart manufacturing, it is making sure that the whole supply chain is smart, and we need to think accordingly. Going all the way is better. And as Lokesh explained, it's not that expensive. I think it's also about gaining deeper insights using technology about customers. When you are able to get deeper insight about customers' expectations, behaviors, after sales service, then it enables you to compete better and to be able to win market share. Wanted to make a quick announcement here that if any of the people who are listening in have any questions to the panelists, feel free to send them across, and then we will have, you can address it to a specific panelist or to any of the panelists, and we will have the question posed to them. So please continue to send your questions in. Okay, let me come to the next item. This is the big elephant in the room about electronics. We don't have electronic hardware manufacturing in India. And electronics is becoming a bigger and bigger part of our products. It's also becoming a bigger and bigger part of our manufacturing. It's also becoming an integral part of our managing our supply chain and our businesses as a whole. What do you think we ought to do in order to ensure that we are Atmanirbhar, or we eventually become Atmanirbhar in the area of auto electronics at least? Otherwise, we are completely dependent and mainly on the Dragon. I was leaving the question for anybody who chooses to answer. Otherwise, I'll be very happy to get the views of Nishant, Manoj.
I think, we might not have the strength of hardware, but we definitely have strength of software. And, that is where India beats China. Leveraging, I agree, the cost of hardware is still very expensive in India. Pertaining to that, we don't have many manufacturers of sensors and related equipment in India. But at the same time, there is a misconception that technology is expensive. I would like to come back to the previous question in terms of affordability. One can start with as cheap as
we missed you.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah, I think there was some disturbance in between. Please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I think it is pertaining to also affordability. One can automate a machine from as cheap as 2,500 rupees device, which is a Raspberry Pi, and it's a very basic device with a CPU and a basic sensors built into it. Now that gives you kind of advantage where you can have your inset software programmers, who are not very expensive to find, and like how Shri also mentioned, they're available on a swipe of a card using services like Fiverr. You can utilize those people to start doing these small actions today by converting, where you can move in from industry 2 to industry 3.0. That is where you reach the scale of PLCs and then take it on from there to industry 4.0.
I have a slightly difference of opinion with what Mr. Taneja mentioned. Where we said that electronics in India is lacking. It is not so. We have a fairly large initiative and a home ground of fantastic electronics and support systems and products available. I would not want to mention the name of a company, but I can just tell you that most of the people here on the panel would have used the services of a PLC manufacturer led by a very Indian organization, which has literally beaten multinational PLC manufacturers in this market. Today, they have been taken over by a Japanese multinational. They have been bought over by a Japanese multinational. But people in the manufacturing industry actually swear by the product even today. It's a vintage Indian make, all and all. So there's just one example. There are many people here.
Anirudh,
Yeah.
you can go ahead and name the company. It's all right.
I'm talking about Mesang. I'm talking about Mesang. And today Mesang has been taken over by Mitsubishi. And Mason today even has loyalists. I can see a few panelists would even agree with me, and a lot of participants would say, yeah, I know this organization. And they have built such a loyal customer base based on purely product quality, sheer quality and service. And this is in a very specialized area where nobody was getting in. So the parallel I would like to draw over here is, if you look at the entire gamut of services for products or services in this industry, right from sensors, except for some special sensors, we have a capability of automation end to end with made in India, right up to the services till the cloud. Of course, we don't make our own cloud service like Microsoft does or on Amazon does, but we are not going there. Fundamentally electronics. In some aspects, the integration of the electronics, which is SoC, system on a chip, this is what we do not do today. An Arduino board, for example, would require that. So the fab plants in India are missing. The government has been trying to push this into picture. We are still not there. But SOCs are not a very big issue. The ability to go to the sensor level is what we are discussing here in manufacturing. The ability to tap into a signal, the ability to understand where to fit an inductive sensor, or whether I need to put just a position sensor, which is costing somewhere around 300 rupees or 500 rupees or 1000 rupees. And then to send that signal directly, either on Wi-Fi or something to maybe a cloud. That's not much. And I think we are probably हिंदी में बोलता हूँ हवा बनाया है इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स का, probably because there are not many electronics engineers who are hands-on in this country. I myself am a mechanical engineer, scared of electronics initially, but when you actually get down to the subject, it is very simple to integrate it. And you don't really have to be a bachelor of engineering to do that. Even if you are, if you have done your 11th or the 12th, you can easily utilize electronics because everything is mentioned on the circuitry, on the paper, and you just have to put the circuit together. Even if you burn up a few chips, they are cheap. So that is what the chip manufacturing has done. In India, chips are available, any kind of chip is available. So I don't think that is the reason. There is a fear, however, of electronics, and that we have to overcome. So I feel pretty confident. I think electronics is something we have, software we have. I would come back to what Lokesh mentioned is intent. And I think we should be focusing more on intent and trying to get there faster.
That's a very
Taneja, can I make a point?
Yeah, sure. That's a very inspirational statement you've made, and I think it's very timely that we should not allow the fact that we don't have hardware manufacturing in the country to come in the way of smart manufacturing at all. It's about using these devices in an intelligent way, in an affordable way, to improve our cost, our productivity, our quality. I think that's a very interesting and very inspiring point that you make. Yes, Siri, you wanted to comment, please.
No, I fully agree with Anirudh that we have a thriving ecosystem of electronic manufacturers in India, but they have not been able to scale up partly because I would say that the customers have not reposed their faith, right? So I would say it's incumbent on all of us, as a panelist and those on the call, to encourage and build this ecosystem too, like the way that, for example, what China has done. And I know of, Messeng too, we have used Messeng, excellent product. And there are so many other such companies that are across India. And in fact, talking about chip itself, IIT Madras is building its own chip. And hopefully, some of us will, once it's out, we'll have to start believing in that and trying it. So as we build,
you're supporting the point that, let's not worry about what we don't have. Let's do the best with what we have and build on our strengths and go all the way. Thank you very much for that, very, very good explanation around it. Okay, I have several questions which I have received. And the first one, which I'm skipping my own questions to come back to some of the audience questions which have come in. Can we compete with the dragon with our current labor laws?
Yes.
Yeah, Gaurav, if you want, you can start, and then I'll come to Manoj after this, and I'd like Nishant to comment.
Yes, sir, we can compete with the dragon with our current labor laws, because using affordable automation, we can reduce our dependence on manpower, number one. Using Industry 4.0 technologies like machine monitoring, predictive maintenance, and closed loop quality production, which is auto gauging, we can again reduce the dependence on skilled manpower. So any person or any automated product could run the machine. So using these things, definitely, despite our labor laws, we can compete with the Chinese. In fact, that's the whole intention of this program, this session.
So, Manoj, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, surely. Yeah, like you, Ashok, you rightly said, this is a circle of concern. So, labor laws is something outside our purview. There's nothing that much we can do about it. But if we look within, if you actually see the per person cost that is prevalent in China versus per person labor cost that is prevalent in India, India is rupee to rupee cheaper even today. The point is the productivity. Again, I'm going back to the productivity, the work ethics, the work discipline is where we lack, and we need to improve. In addition to what Gauravji said in terms of automation, definitely. But if you see at the larger level, the GDP per capita of China is 4 times that of India. So it's clearly the productivity. The rupee to rupee cost of labor is actually cheaper in India.
So is it, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you think it is because of labor laws, or it is because management has to own the responsibility to skill the workmen, to invest in their training, to motivate them, to create engagement, and to make them more productive?
Absolutely. The second part, it's completely on the management as to how we make the labor far more productive than what it is today. That's a huge upside.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. Any comments from Nishant, please?
I think it is also in terms of getting the most value out of your manpower. What even Manoj talked about. It's about skilling the manpower. Taking an example once again from our own plant, how we've been able to utilize our permanent manpower, which has been an exorbitant cost because operating in a state like Maharashtra, we have been able to train those people. We've been able to guide those people to adopt low-cost automation, train on pneumatics, hydraulics, and basically kind of skilling and get the max volume out of it. As you said, circle of concern, you cannot really do anything but make the best out of it. So we've been trying to, reduce the circle of concern and increase the circle of independence. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is almost along the same lines, which has come from the audience, that there are many other cost disadvantages. Our port clearing time is long, our cost of logistics and our cost of capital. And how can we compete with the dragon given all this? Any quick comments on that?
Circle of concerns, as you rightly said, would continue to be there, and we need to keep solving them one by one. Ports, yes, that is something which has been there, and there are examples of countries like Korea who have turned this around very fast. One way is also looking at public participation in such infrastructural development to be able to accelerate the growth. Another one is where we have instruments of investment where people invest into manufacturing or trying to improve manufacturing. I think this has also happened in India, but I don't think it's a very popular information. So those concerns will be there. But the best part is to focus on what you can influence as of now, what is within your supply chain. And I think that's the best way to go ahead, because the rest of the things, they may not be in your control, but they will also come under your circle of influence if you bring your first circle of influence stronger in your hands. This is what I feel.
So what you're reinforcing is, let us do what is within our circle of influence. Let us become smarter, more cost competitive in that area. There will be some disadvantages. For example, I wanted to share the cost of labor in China today, skilled labor, is many times, in many areas, 1.5 to 3 times of what is prevailing in India. China is no longer a low labor cost country. So we have some advantages of lower costs. We have some disadvantages of perhaps a higher logistics cost. And we have to leverage what is available with us by whichever can lead to a biggest impact on our competitiveness. Any other comment around this?
Yeah, Ashokji, I want to add on one point, which was alluded to by maybe Nishant earlier. In fact, Anirudh also just told, that the biggest component is the raw material cost. In any of us, it is 60 to 75% give or take. That's the range that we all operate in. So unless we extend these advantages, these technologies, these learnings to tier 2 and tier 3, we will be found wanting. So that's one area which is again within our circle of influence, which we all have to go the extra mile as a company, as an industry, as an association. We need to go the extra mile to take the tier 2s along with us, so that collectively we improve as a whole. And that's where China is actually beating us. If you see, the raw material cost is much lesser.
I think you make a much bigger point. It's not just about tier 2, as Anirudh mentioned earlier. It's about forming partnerships. It's about having symbiotic relationships. It's about understanding interdependence, which makes the whole system more competitive rather than just your own operations within your own plant. Yes, Gaurav, I saw that you were nodding. You wanted to add something.
Yeah,
to it. Please go ahead.
Yeah, what Manojji said is music to my ears, because I have been trying to evangelize this thing for years now, that it's the big companies with the resources, with the cloud, and in some cases with the profitability, the global competitiveness, the Bajaj of India. They need to have this kind of thing flow down to the tier 1, 2, 3 suppliers. They need to take more responsibility to ensure that these people are encouraged to, maybe even subsidized initially, to adopt some smart technologies, see the results, and then deploy in a more extensive manner. And then if somebody has 30 vendors, and out of these you do these experiments in 3 vendors and have success stories, then I mean, how beautiful it is to spread the word across with real success stories. So we need to have the bigger companies take the smaller companies along. Only then we'll have the complete value chain and the complete Indian industry beating the Chinese.
It is the law of nature that developed countries should handhold developing countries, and the stronger must handhold the weaker, and the bigger must handhold the smaller. I think that is the way progress is made. I have another question, that China has taken a big lead over India already. Is it possible for India to catch up and become as cost competitive? Is this the right moment? An interesting question.
Yeah,
Sri, would you like to?
Sorry. Okay.
No, go ahead, Lokesh, please start. And then after that.
I think the cost, it's very, experience has taught us that the cost comes down when the scale happens, right? And that's imperative. And of course, unlike like you're a big company and you want to maintain that price, but that's a different one. But in auto component, China has achieved a scale, and hence it's been cost competitive. Our India market may not be as big as China, but India's optimism, India's willingness to do business, Indians' encouragement to have a social connects with the customers. The way we treat customers is far better than any other I have seen, at least, including me or all of us here. So these 3 points doesn't hold us from number one, dreaming to make it big, number two, making it happen. So these two are possible. I'm a firm believer of a possibility. That possibility, with all that whatever we've discussed on this panel discussion, whether it's a basic of manufacturing, starting from intent, basic of manufacturing, smart manufacturing technologies, adopting all the technologies, having a better use of our resources. We're a 1.3 billion people company, and there are and 50% of them are youngsters. There are lots of possibilities there, and I'm a firm believer that it is possible. But what we need is a scale. We have to look at a scale. All these companies, which are technology companies, even in the COVID times, have generated more of a valuation, and they were going ahead with a bigger money invested. That's only because of the sheer scale possible. In the manufacturing, we should start treating manufacturing like a software company, like a scalable possibility company, and look at our shift. Why can't we offer manufacturing as service model? Why do we have to be doing that particular plant only one set of a product? Why can't it offer more set of a product? So we need to have that fundamental shift and thinking itself. Then that would begin.
Okay, but competing with China, that is the theme. Competing with the dragon and winning. So how can we say, is this the right moment? Yes, Sri.
So Taneja, there is a saying, even elephants do fall. Right. So in this case, dragons can also fall. And, in regards to the timing, I think the timing cannot be better because, the perception of, China and its bullyism, there are so many issues around that. And there are many geographies and regions, that are rethinking about their relationship with China. So I would say there is no better time for India. Like Lokesh said, we're a billion smart people here. And if we integrate, our manufacturing systems, our supply chain with the rest of the world, I think the timing cannot be any better. That's what I would say.
Sri, with only one little observation from my side, that China does not have to lose for India to win.
No, agreed.
We can win on our own steam, and the world is big enough to
absolutely yes,
have both countries, supply meet their requirements. Also, in terms of timing, the world is looking for a second footprint.
Yes,
they are looking for a second reliable source. I think the recent events, more particularly, have accelerated that desire.
Correct.
So, in terms of timing, to whoever is a gentleman who asked the question, there could be no better moment for India. Also, we must remember that India is the last large auto market opportunity available in the whole world. There is no other country in the world which is going to have as big an upside in auto as India. We have very low penetration, a lot of latent demand. Our penetration is less than 20 cars per 1,000 people, just over 100 two-wheelers per 1,000 people. A big upside exists over here, and we have a large opportunity. That can offer us the scale. And also, I think the next question, I'm translating it because it's rather long, which has come to me. It's talking about Indian manufacturers versus foreign manufacturers, the perennial controversy on FDI in manufacturing. Is it required to bring smart manufacturing to India? I don't know if it's a general question which has come. It's too long, so I'm translating it. If anybody would like to share a very quick comment, because we are coming towards the end of the conversation today. Anirudh, you're an Indian OEM, and maybe this question is really addressed to you. How do you see foreign direct investment in manufacturing coming in to bring in smart manufacturing, the culture of smart manufacturing?
I was just trying to understand the sense of the question. Any investment in any country is always going to bring its own set of cultural values or technology values. So that is a given. Accelerated growth also comes with that. Having said that, yes, FDI is always important, but it is not, in my opinion, not necessarily the only driver for growth. There can be accelerated growth in pockets. I think the essential thing is to find out our own internal strengths, whether we have them or not, because FDI could come in, FDI could leave, FDI could come in jumps, or FDI could come in a planned manner with a very different set of priorities. Having said it is welcome, I think the more pertinent underpinning in the question was, how would you be able to accelerate growth? Would FDI help it? And I think, yes, FDI helps it, but what else helps it? Does FDI only help it, or is there anything else? I would look at the infrastructure also, because whether FDI comes in or not is a larger circle of concern. It would depend on various factors, whether it is the geography of the country, whether the roads are good, whether the ports are good, whether the financial systems are good, and would probably have very less to do with only the manufacturing industry, which has been the case with China or Korea. But if we are trying to look at something else other than FDI, sure, we would probably want to look at internal educational institutions and whether they would be able to add a lot of value by providing engineers, or whether industry can go back to institutions and see whether there is a better facilitation, so that the skill at the actually entry level and then the operational level is improved phenomenally. I don't think we looked at this question throughout the entire discussion. Neither did I see many questions coming from the participants. But I think this is a very, very big question when we keep talking about people. How is industry and institution also going to work together to help create a supply chain in manufacturing, which will accelerate the growth? Because it has to come internally. Any amount of technology which you get through an FDI is going to come through royalty. Who is going to use it over here? The people are going to utilize it. So where are the people?
Sorry to interrupt you, but a clarification has come that, FDI will bring in not only technology, but lead to much higher scale. And that will help us to compete with the dragon. So should we not focus on attracting more FDI to bring more manufacturing into India?
Sure. That is also a very good perspective. And I was going to mention that as well as a different aspect. Which markets are we going to look at? FDI is going to bring in scale by providing you back buying markets, or markets where they buy back. Absolutely. Or maybe bigger markets where the brand name is better known. Other than that, can we also use the same strategy to see which markets are open to us? I was looking at differentiation. Can we differentiate various markets? Can we differentiate from China? Cost is, of course, one area where cost has to be competitive. But beyond cost, is there something which we can differentiate, which China probably does not have, or which the world is looking at? Is there a white space for India to grow? And I think, yes, we are good in design. I think in many cases, we are much better in China in design. We are probably a little more original in design. And here I would like to say that the perspective of where we are thinking has to change. Look at the differentiation, not only on the cost, but other parameters which have made us a success. Like you mentioned, Bajaj, or finding a sweeter price point where we are positioned between a different parameter. And I think those are the bigger white spaces which we still have to explore. So with FDI, of course, it is easier made. But even if there is no FDI, I think we should be actively asking these questions and actively seeking these markets.
Okay. I think we are completely running out of time, and I thought it is appropriate for me to just give a very, very quick summary of what has been shared by this highly experienced set of people on the panel. Everything begins with top management commitment and an intent. And competing with the dragon is now a necessity, and it is doable. Government and industry will have to work together. While government has its own areas which need to be addressed, industry has its own areas which we can address on our own area, circle of influence. And smart manufacturing is the way to go, whether you are a small company, mid-size, or a large company, and you have to focus on your strengths. Find the area where the impact will be highest and start there. It does not have to start all the way. You can go step by step. Try to include the complete supply chain, go all the way. It will give a bigger impact on your cost competitiveness. And it is not expensive. It has a good ROI. And with the smart manufacturing, you can actually become more cost competitive and achieve scale. So cost competitiveness leads to scale, which leads to further cost competitiveness and brings you into the virtuous cycle. You can't do it alone. You need to have partnerships. So invest in appropriate partnerships. There are specialists available who can provide this assistance to go smart on your production line. And that is the way to become Atmanirbhar. So having made these observations, let me just close with a small note that if we go back many years, it was Hindi, Chini, Bhai Bhai. This, in the last 20 years, 25 years, became Hindi, Chini, Bye Bye, B-U-Y, B-U-Y. Now, I think we are at a very interesting point when it is more like Hindi, Chini, Bye Bye, B-Y-E, B-Y-E. Of course, the truth lies somewhere in between. We can coexist, but we have to, for the sake of our own country, we have to make sure that we become more cost competitive, more productive, and it is doable. And we've heard the wise panelists share with us today on the many ways in which we can actually become more productive and more cost competitive. With that, I want to thank all the panelists. I want to thank all the people listening in for this very useful session. Thank you. Over to you, Vinny.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Taneja. As always, it was a brilliant session. And I think we need to work towards this virtual cycle. And as Anirudh said, from smart manufacturing, we need to move to smart value chains. And that would be probably the new road to prosperity and success for India. So thank you once again for being with us today. That's for the panelists and also for all our audience. And Mr. Taneja, thank you once again for brilliantly teeing in everything, inputs that came in together. And I'm sure the panelists would have enjoyed as much being on this panel. And we look forward to all of you engaging with us, giving us direction. And when things improve, I invite you to visit the ACMA Center of Excellence. That's a brilliant new center that we have curated. And again, for helping people for smart manufacturing. So do please use us. We're absolutely low cost. There wouldn't be any questions on ROIs. I assure you. Dinesh, do you have any announcements to make?
Yeah. So I just wanted to thank our today's moderators, and you already thanked. We have two sponsors. One is DesignX and another is Construction Company. We are thankful to them. And I have the last announcement. There are so many questions. So I request the attendees to write to us and we will get connected, because there are some questions related to ACMA. Also, will ACMA support in basic manufacturing, product development? We do support. So we want to assure you that please send your inquiries to ACMA. I will just put our email address there. I think we are there to support each other and we'll take it forward. So once again, thank you on behalf of ACMA and ACMA Center of Excellence. And we conclude today's panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.